What are the biggest mistakes you see business owners make when it comes to their finances?
Revenue and your bank account are lagging indicators. He worked less and made 5 times the amount of profit. If I didn't start digging into this stuff, I'd be miserable.
What's the most common excuse owners make for not looking at their financials?
They don't understand them. There's usually a come to Jesus moment when people realize I cannot continue to operate in the dark.
What advice would you give a business owner who's working hard but not making enough money?
Data is just a source of truth. What are you spending your time on that's not producing results?
Today on ASAP Unfiltered, I have Brittany McKnight. Brittany is our fractional CFO. She's owner of Progress to Profits, which coaches business owners on how to get more profitable. But I'll let you kind of go into that more. I know what you do for me, but I know you help a lot of other business owners too. So can you just go over a little bit about number one, what does a fractional CFO do? And number two, what does your company do in particular to help construction owners?
A fractional CFO is not an accountant. They're not a bookkeeper. They're not somebody that's going to go through your financials and classify transactions. They're going to be somebody that, especially nowadays, this role has really evolved because a fractional CFO really needs to help bring the entire organization together and be able to see not just the financial vision of the company, but how that relates operationally to what we're wanting to produce profit-wise. And so there's a lot of emphasis on profitability, but not just on making more money, but doing it sustainably, doing it with the team in mind, really understanding the vision of the company, and especially because the fractional CFO works so much with the visionary of the company, being able to have some of that mindset themselves so that they're not just looking at money and that we're not making decisions solely in terms of, well, this doesn't fit in the budget. It's like aligning the financial resources with the vision to propel the business forward. CFO can mean a lot of things to a lot of people. We really look at the business holistically because profit is not a thing that you do, it is a result of what you do. And so that's why we're just so big on understanding like your team dynamics, understanding what your vision is for your company, like what is it we're actually working toward? Because all of that stuff at the end of the day is a filter for us to understand where to allocate our resources in the most profitable way possible.
So at the beginning you said what you are not. Is that that's like a common misconception, right, of a fractional CFO, that they are more of like a bookkeeper or
I think
accountant?
that, it's so funny because, and this is just really recent, but I've seen a lot of people coming out of the woodwork, I think because of AI, and they're like, oh, anybody can be a fractional CFO. And the thing about it is there's no business degree, there's no college degree or anything. There's not a license to be a fractional CFO. So literally anybody can be a CFO if they want to proclaim that. And I know coffee shop owners that have become CFOs. And it's not that you necessarily aren't qualified to do that, but a bookkeeper might call that. I would see people offer bookkeeping services and fractional CFO. And that can be okay if you truly offer that, but a lot of people are putting those two things together and really they don't have the type of mindset or the foresight to be able to actually provide that kind of value to people.
Mm-hmm.
And so they're looking more transactionally at things than they should be to actually be able to provide that value. And so it's easy for anybody to just slap on that label with having no experience. And I think that's just kind of one of the things that like girds my loins, if you will. Because I mean, I did, and I was blessed. Like I came from a background where I did work directly under the CFO of a very large corporation. And not everybody necessarily needs that experience, but also you cannot just say, I'm a bookkeeper one day and then I'm going to immediately go into that. I mean, I had a lot of experience because the corporation I worked for had all kinds of businesses in under it. And so I wasn't just an accountant. Like we were in there in the operations. We were setting up point of sale systems. We were, going in there and helping restaurants to develop their menus. Because that's what a CFO does, so that they see all of those things so that they can understand what's showing up on this profit and loss. And so a bookkeeper is not going to see those kinds of things.
Yeah. I think your background really helps bring the life to your business because you have the accounting, the boring degree stuff, but then you also have the real life experience before you started your own company. Do you want to talk about why you started your own company?
I think the biggest thing, this sounds so probably cliche, But I think the thing for me is that I just see so many business owners that are struggling to understand business and struggling to understand money. They don't know how to connect what they're doing to what is showing up in their bank account. And that stuff can become really overwhelming really fast, and what I see it do more than anything else is it makes people so overwhelmed and frustrated that they don't want to grow. And I firmly believe that God put us on this earth to his first command to us was to be fruitful and multiply. And so when people let these little things, it seems little to me, but I know that it's huge, but when they let things like not understanding business, not understanding taxes, not understanding how to read a profit or loss be the reason that they don't pursue their goals and that they don't grow their company and that they don't do more to be able to bless their team, like that's just something that I couldn't resonate with. In the company that I was working for, I saw that with so many businesses that we were working with, and I didn't necessarily love the fact that it was just very cut and dry. Like there's nobody really mentoring these people. They were giving them, they owned all these small businesses. They had these managers that were running them. They would give them financial information, but they gave them no actual equipment to learn how to run a business. And then they just give them this data and expect them to know what to do with it. And so it really wasn't setting them up for success. And I just got tired of seeing that because I was like, these are great people, but they can't do great things if they don't understand what they're doing. And so that was really just what it was. Like I just woke up one day and I quit, and here we are.
Well, I think that's a big vision though, because you didn't say, "Oh, I just wanna make more money, so I wanna work for myself." It's like you saw a need in the market
If you
and
want
you
to make
wanted to
more
help
money,
people.
don't start a business. If that is the only reason you want
If
to
you
make
wanna
money,
have time, don't start a business.
yeah, like you can make money, but this is one of the things I tell people is like, if your only reason for starting a business is because you didn't want to work for other people, like nobody gives a crap.
Mhm.
Like don't go tell your customers and stuff that, because that nobody cares. They want value from you. That's why I'm like it's just non-negotiable in me. Like when we work with people, that's one of the first questions we have. Like, what is your vision for your business? Because if you just want to make some money, like either you're going to have to establish one or we can't work together because that's not what it's about. That is the result of what it's
Mhm.
about.
Okay, so I'm gonna shift a little to, like, our company. What's been your experience over the years working with ASAP?
I would say a lot of moving pieces, but I think my favorite thing is that you truly put an emphasis on people, like people development, and there is a lot of investing in people and truly like caring about the team. And so that's one of the things that I've definitely witnessed. I have watched the evolution. Probably one of my favorite things is the evolution of truly leaning into your data and using that as a source of truth rather than guessing. And so, that's been really fulfilling to be able to see. And it's like, we're not guessing what to fix right now. We know like there's always any business has anything to fix at any point in time. Like that is how you grow. Your constraints are what help you to grow. But being able to leverage data to be able to say like, this is our problem. We know exactly what to fix. And it just saves so much time. And I truly believe like that in and of itself has saved so much more headache than anything else in the last couple of years.
Yeah, we've definitely learned to lean into the data. And I almost feel like our company has, as you've grown your company and developed new processes, it's only helped us more. Like, the new dashboards we come up with and all things like that. Like,
Mhm.
sounds boring to other people, but makes me excited.
Yeah, well, and even with AI, like looking at, just some stuff that we're doing right now, and I'm so excited to be able to bring that into here because you all have so much data at any given point in time. I
Mhm.
mean, it's endless and it's not going to change. I mean, you can continue to simplify your business, but it's not going to simplify the need for the data. And AI, I'm really excited for that because like the dashboards and stuff that we use, oh my gosh, I cannot wait for the stuff that we're going to build. That's going to make visibility so much simpler to get at a faster pace. And that's where I really think that AI is going to help with construction, with people that actually want to scale construction companies. I mean, AI, I don't see as a replacement for a lot of things. AI is just a tool for speed at
Mhm.
the end of the day. And the faster that you can get data and that you understand how to leverage it for decisions, the faster you can make profitable decisions, the faster you'll grow.
I was reading that, I forget which study it was, but small to medium-sized businesses are utilizing AI like at a 30% higher rate than large businesses. So I feel like it's a great opportunity for small
Yeah.
businesses to kind of take over because enterprise level, I don't know why, but they're not using it as much.
Yeah, it's interesting because I actually was listening to something today that was talking about how there's still these mega corporations that are spending $150,000, $200,000 on building websites when
But
you can do the same thing for less than $10,000 in a few hours if you have the right skill set. But
yeah.
that's where they lack is the skill set. They've got all the money, but not the genius.
Yeah. What are the biggest mistakes you see business owners make when it comes to their finances?
Using their bank account to make decisions and revenue and your bank account are lagging indicators. They tell you what has happened, they don't tell you what has happened. I think that I just come back to data for so many things. I mean, holding your team accountable, using key performance indicators, and I think about another construction company that we have where he was wanting to sell his business, and he had to start getting really critical about looking at his data. And one of the really cool things was that he started tracking profitability of his projects on a project by project basis. And he started to realize, like, there's certain projects that it doesn't make sense for me to even bid them. They might be high ticket, but because of what they are, and he
Mhm.
understands his costs and his overhead to allocate to those, it wasn't even worth his time. And he worked, like, last year was a phenomenal year for him. He worked less and made 5 times the amount of profit, and he's gone fishing more in the last 2 years than he's ever been in his life. And, he will tell you, he was like, "If I didn't start digging into this stuff, then I don't know where I would be. I would be miserable."
Yeah.
All from visibility. Like, I just cannot emphasize data. I look at data, like, data is a very broad term in business. I mean, I look at data in like 3 different types. There's aspirational data, there's operational data, and then there's financial data. And you don't need to know everything all the time, but I think business owners definitely need to understand the basics about finance. Looking at your financial statements it sounds so mundane, but when you commit to doing it, just like anything else you're consistent at, but actually going through those and understanding how to read a profit and loss, like that financial data, and then leveraging operational data so that you can have that foresight. Because if revenue and your bank account are a lagging indicator, well, you want to see what's happening before that stuff is created. And so this is why we're big on looking at operational data and key performance indicators about what's happening all the way from the time a customer finds out about us to the time that they're leaving us a Google review. Like, I want to see what's going on in my company in
Mhm.
between there, and then setting targets, because you got to have a goal. Because if you're looking at all that stuff in a vacuum, but you don't actually have a reference point for what you're working toward, and have something aspirational, then that stuff really becomes a lot less meaningful.
Mhm. I don't know if you see this in other companies, but like when I share data with my team, it takes a while for me to coach them to know what to do with that. Like they understand the data, they understand the metrics, but they don't know exactly how their role can change that data. So like do you see that in other companies with people? Because it's like you can have all the data, but not everyone knows what to do with it or what actions to take after they see it.
Yeah, I think that a lot of that is trust. What comes to mind for me is people don't know the right questions to ask. And so because they don't know the right questions to ask, they don't know how they can influence that data. They think that they don't have any control over it. That could be an element. I definitely see that where people might be held accountable to certain data points or KPIs. You might have salespeople that are accountable for sales, but if they're not given autonomy to be able to do things to generate those sales, obviously within parameters,
Mhm.
then they don't feel like they can really do anything about that. That's why I believe, like, and we just talked about this. When you bring on team members, you got to make sure you have the structure set up for them to be successful. And part of that is making sure that you have clear accountability measures with the KPIs, but also talking to them about how they can influence those things, because they can understand it, but if they don't trust the data or if they don't understand how they can, you know, influence that data. But then there's also sometimes you don't hire the right people.
Oh, I know. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, and sometimes so you can have all this data and you can give them all of this information, but if they're not the right person for that company, if they're
Mhm.
not the right person for that role, then if you can give them all the information and a reasonable person would be successful in that role and they're still just not getting it, you probably don't have the right person in that role.
Yeah.
So it's not always they need more information. It's like, is it the right person?
Yeah. And like being in line with the mission because sometimes they don't know like, oh, we raised goals this quarter, but they don't understand why. They think it's because everyone's out to get them. But it's like,
Yes.
no, we raised it because here's our goal for the year and for the next 10 years.
Yeah, I
So,
do believe like you got to lead with why. I know Simon Sinek has talked about this a lot. He's huge on that, but I think that was one of my frustrations too with working in the corporate world is like I'm like why I'm doing all this stuff and it's like way more than just accounting. Like why does this matter? Because I don't really see. I understand this stuff, but I don't see how it's helping anybody. And I think that fundamentally, a lot of people just want to understand that what they're doing is more than a paycheck. And so, yeah, I agree with you. You got to like lead with the vision, you got to lead with the mission, and then go into this is why Target is what it is. Like, we
mhm.
helped this many people last year and made this much. Well, we want to help this many people this year and make this much.
Yeah. Yeah, I think starting with that is what I haven't done in the past. It's kind of just like, here's your numbers.
Yeah,
But yes, leading leading with
people
that
want a
in front.
purpose.
What's a number every business owner should know off the top of their head?
Your net operating income. I would say, specifically like the ratio, not the dollar amount. Because if you have a company that is a $5 million company and they're making $500,000 in profit, well, that person's going to be miserable because a $5 million company is barely making it. But if you're a $5 million company at 2 million in profit, well, you're going to have a lot more peace of mind because you got much more margin. But if you're just looking at the dollar amount, like you don't truly know. So that's why, as businesses are scaling, one of the things we look at is, is the profitability stable? Is it consistent? If we're at 1 million versus 10 million, because what a lot of people end up doing is they grow revenue instead and lose sight of profitability. And all they do is they grow chaos. And so they lose sight of that. And, your profit at the end of the day, everything comes out in the wash right there.
Yeah, profit is for vanity, or no, other way
Revenue
around.
is
Revenue is for vanity.
profit
Profit
is
is for
sanity, and
sanity.
cash flow is clarity. Yes.
Oh, cash flows clarity. I like that. So, how often should owners really be looking at their financials?
I mean, I think that looking at your financials once a month, non-negotiable. In between there, I mean, there's definitely tools that we leverage that we're essentially looking at financials every week, but non-negotiable. You should be looking at those every month. I don't think you have to look at them more than that. I think that can become redundant because at that point, I mean, when you're looking at I think it's not just looking at your financials. It's like, what am I looking for? And it's like, what are things that have happened in my business that I didn't see until I looked at these financials? Because you're really just looking at what has happened at that
Yeah.
point. And so it's not just looking at your financials, but it's looking at what actually happened versus what I thought happened. Because if you're running your business off your bank account, then there's a disconnect in there. And one of my favorite questions to talk to people about is, why does my bank account look so different from this profitability? Or why am I paying taxes on all this money that I feel like I haven't seen? And so when you get used to looking at that and asking questions, that's what looking at your financials really should be doing, is providing clarity on what's happened and then setting a tone for what needs to change.
Okay. So, at least once a month.
Yes.
Okay. Okay. We talked about this a little bit like just this week, I think, but what's the most common excuse owners make for not looking at their financials?
They don't understand them. Number one, they don't understand them, and so there's no point, or they're not going to change anything in their business. They think as a result of that until they actually have to. But one of the things, there's usually a come to Jesus moment when people realize like I cannot continue to operate in the dark.
Yeah.
But that is the biggest thing, is that they don't understand it. But then that moment where they realize I can't continue operating like this, usually something negative has happened. And then that's when they start asking questions to understand. And so that's usually the reason a lot of people don't. But once you do, I mean, it's the simple things, simple scales every time.
Yeah. So, what's one lesson that you've learned from coaching business owners? And the second question with that is there any difference in coaching construction or trades business owners?
I don't know the biggest thing with coaching people. I would say that business is more, I say what I run into a lot more these days is leadership challenges and leveraging data to bridge the gap. with leadership. And what I mean by that is, so every business that we work with, they come in, it's heavily dependent on the owner. And they've got this team under them, and growth just keeps creating more chaos and more work for them rather than the other way around. They keep hiring people, but it still ends up being more work for them. And so, in working with people and coaching them, we're looking at where is, one of the things I look at specifically is how much of this profit is dependent on you, because that's really dangerous for your team. And I always think about, like, okay, if you get hit by a bus, do you have a structure in place for this business to be sustainable? Because it's not just about you. And that's probably one of the most frustrating things, but we usually overcome that, though, with people. And then I'd say with construction, I don't really see this so much with just construction, but business owners in general that think that their business is unique is a detriment to their growth. And it is very important to have your vision, but at the end of the day, when you start to realize that my business is not special, I'm not the only person that can do what I can do, it actually creates a lot of relief, because you start to realize, like, just because you think a certain way that's produced results doesn't mean that other people can't do what you're doing. It's just become instinctual to you, and we need to codify it. And so that's probably that's the number one thing, is getting them to understand that your business is not about you, and that if you think you're the only person that can do it, you need to check your ego, because there's a ton of other construction companies out there, med spas, service-based business. There's a ton of other fractional CFO companies out there that can help people. And when you realize that you can scale any business, it makes it a lot simpler to start asking yourself, okay, I have a routine way of making decisions that I need to learn how to turn into a system so that my business can scale and stop relying on me. And it just makes it so much simpler. It's not going to happen tomorrow, but when you realize, hey, I'm not special, I can actually turn this into a system, you can do that, and it will make your business simpler so that growth doesn't create more overwhelm.
So that the first thing you start on when you go into a business is kind of, I guess, removing the business owner from being
That's the
the
first thing
center
I'm
of
looking
it.
at. I'm looking at where are the dependencies in here that are preventing the growth or making it unprofitable. Because one of the things that I think of is that it's not because they don't know what to do that they might be having a hard time being profitable. It is a lot of times that the other people on their team don't know what to do. And so it's like, well, of course the business owner can say, well, this needs to be done. And then they jump in there and things get better for a little bit, but then they step back out and it falls back apart again. And it's like, okay, we got to codify whatever you're doing. We've got to turn that into the system.
Mm-hmm.
And so that it can be successful. So yeah, I'm looking for, like, where are their dependencies on the business owners? Where's their structure that is missing? Yeah, just like when you build a house, you got to have the infrastructure first before you put the systems and the HVAC and the electrical and all that stuff in there. You've got to understand and build that structure to support the scale.
Yeah. And I think for us, what I've noticed is, like, as we grow, like, the same structures are not gonna work. You have to kind of rebuild as you grow all the time. Like, there's new processes that we are developing all the time
I would
because
say the
it didn't work anymore.
structure will remain. It's the systems for sure that evolve.
Yeah.
And so that's what makes it hard, is because a lot of people want to dive into strategy, and strategy is really dependent on energy and systems at the end of the day. But if you don't have the structure that can hold those systems in place, then yeah, because you're definitely gonna, and that's why we go through the process like we're about to go through, where you go through and you step back and you actually look at what has been happening in our business and reflecting on that, and then looking at, okay, this is our constraint right now. What are we going to do going forward? That's where you have that process, whether it's monthly or quarterly, whatever it looks like, to evaluate that.
Mhm.
But the structure is largely going to stay the same. But I mean, you got to let your business evolve, because there are a lot of things that are going to change. Just like
Yes.
the team that gets you to 10 million won't be the team that gets you to 50 million.
Yeah, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Yes. What advice would you give a business owner who feels like they're working hard but not making enough money?
I would ask, what is that based on? What is that feeling based on? As far as advice that I would give them, I immediately go to, I go to looking at your financials and what are they telling you? Because data is just a source of truth. Whether it's good data or it's bad data, it's still a source of truth. And so I always start there in understanding, what are you spending your time on that's not producing results? And so we just start digging into data. first and foremost. But that's where I would start to look, is understanding, I talked about like the knowing your net operating income, that ratio. Like I would want to understand my profit ratios and invest in somebody that can help to understand your financials to you. What is you're seeing on your financials and in your bank account, how is that translating to what's happening operationally? And somebody that can connect those pieces together. And I don't know that a lot of people can do that, but a fractional CFO a lot of times can help you to bridge that gap into, this is what the financials are saying, and I can see how this is showing up in operations, why you're working so much harder without it producing results. A lot of times I look at like 5 key areas of where people end up working more without really seeing the payoff. And a lot of times it's pricing. They're not priced properly. And so that's why I'm like, let's look at your financials to see where that's at. So they're looking at their pricing, but a lot of people are underpricing themselves in business, which there's only 2 ways to increase profit and revenue, and it's volume and price. And if you won't raise your prices, you have to increase your volume.
Which is harder.
Yeah, it is harder. It's definitely harder. And so, if you're finding yourself in a place where I can't raise my prices, but you can't raise your volume. Well, you're going to have to raise your prices. But what is really, because at that point, pricing becomes downstream of what the actual problem is. And so you might have weak positioning in your market. Maybe you have no marketing and advertising present whatsoever. So that might be one of the constraints. I look at positioning. I look at, what are you actually offering? Do you know what you have to offer? Does it make sense? Do people understand what it is that you have to offer? Does what you have to offer make sense relative to your business? And then understanding the pathway that your clients take, because there's so many inefficiencies in there a lot of times that eat up profitability that you're not seeing. And then your people, they are a huge cost center. And so if, especially if you've got everybody on your team, that it's like, everybody on my team is working harder, including me, and we're not making any more money. It's like, where are we spending time on things that are costing us rather than providing a return on investment? And so being able to see that.
Okay. So just for people who are listening who may not like have a fractional CFO or anybody like that in place, at what point do you recommend somebody get one?
I would say for sure. I mean, and I just throwing this out there, if you are $1 million business, you have, a few team members under your belt, like you're definitely at a point where you need somebody that is going to go above and beyond just giving you financial statements that you have no idea. It's going to be that, I think of it like a translator. They're going to help you to understand what's happening on these financials versus seeing into your business and what's happening operationally. Because at that point, if you got to $1 million, you got there from hard work and grit, and that's great, but that's not going to get you to the next level. And, I would say, relatively speaking, $1 million is simpler to make today than it was 5 years ago. For multiple reasons. There's so many resources and things like that you can get on the internet to understand your business and finances. But that's where I would say it. I mean, at least $1 million business needs somebody that can be that financial translator for them.
Yeah. I don't remember where we were at when we brought you guys on. But definitely before that, I didn't have any sort of CFO. It was more like accounting teams that were really jacking up my books, and they would share the data with me. I'm like, okay, cool. But
Yeah.
number
What
one,
does this mean?
number one, it was all wrong. But number two, they didn't put anything behind it. They just would send it. We'd review it sometimes, but it had no like story, and I didn't understand. And I
Yeah.
come from a finance background, like I can see it, but I didn't know how it related to my business.
Yeah, you said the key word, the story, because your financials are telling a story. But if you don't know how, it's like if you don't know how to read Spanish,
Yeah,
then it's
translator. I like that
yeah. I
analogy.
mean, that's how, because I think that's what's been so fun, especially because of how much data we have access to. And that's why I say, like, whether the data is right or if it's wrong, it's still good data, because if you know enough to know that the data is wrong, then it's not the data that's the problem. It's the fact that you have a system that has bad inputs. And so that, like, once you start to understand, and that's how I look at financials, like we just reverse engineer from the financial statements, but then we dig into so much more than that.
Yeah.
And so, if you're getting bad data, you have bad systems. And so once you start to realize, like, that's what data is telling you, then it tells you exactly what to fix in your business so that you don't have to have all this chaos and you're just patching stuff together all the time.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, there's so much more we could talk about, but I'm gonna go into some rapid fire fun questions. Okay. So we're gonna switch it up into something fun in case we still have people listening after all the money talk.
Yeah.
Okay. Cash flow or sales?
Cash flow.
Dashboard or spreadsheet?
Dashboard.
Coffee or espresso?
Espresso.
Gym before work or after work?
Ooh, after work for me.
Okay. Most overrated business metric?
Revenue.
Most underrated?
Ooh, I want to say profit, but that's a lagging indicator. I go back to profit. I think there's just so much volume. Profit,
Okay.
underrated.
And I know that you're not a bookkeeper, but I think this would help people. What's the most common bookkeeping mistake that owners should look out for?
Oh man.
Something that you see on the financials and it flags red to you, but other people may not notice.
I'm trying to think because my team
Your
knows
team
better.
knows, yeah.
Things that I see. Oh man. I think the biggest mistake is lumping everything, like lumping all revenue into one revenue line item, or lumping, not breaking out expenses properly for visibility. That just drives me nuts. I mean, if you have a business, especially with multiple divisions, like you should be able to see your revenue, your profit and loss by division. But for instance, like bookkeepers just don't do that stuff.
Yeah.
Drives me
Okay.
nuts.
Good. What's the most common thing owners overspend on?
Advertising in the wrong places. Not advertising, but in the wrong places.
Okay. What's your most common phrase you use when you're coaching others?
The first thing that comes to mind is data don't lie.
People do.
Yes. Yes, exactly. People do.
Okay. That's all I have. Thank
Love
you.
it.
I appreciate you coming in, and we're going to have a fun few days of learning,
I'm excited.
planning, and strategizing, which is what everyone should do.
Yes, they should.
Okay. Thank you.